my name's Caitlin. I'm from grassfedgirl.com, and I'm so excited today. We have Kelly Hogan. She's a 14-year carnivore. She's an expert on carnivore from her own experiences, and she's helped tons of people in her groups. And I'm just so excited to have Kelly with us. Welcome, Kelly.
Thanks. What's up, Caitlin? It's good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you in Zoom life.
Yeah.
So, tell us your story and how you got started on carnivore.
Okay, Caitlin, I knew you were going to ask me about my story because I am a prophetess. And I'm just kidding, because you sent me an email. And and in the email you said we'll start off with your story. So it's been so long ago now that I have to pull up a photo and like sit and spend a little time chilling with her before an interview. This was actually taken 19 years ago. So my first 5 years, I don't count as technically carnivore because I was still having a lot of sugar-free stuff, but I was eating almost exclusively meat, but still drinking diet sodas. So 19 years ago, that was me. And I had just gone to Bible school. I could barely get up the 4 steps, 3 or 4 steps to the stage altar area where my dad was the pastor. My husband and I, there's a reason I'm holding a puppet. I didn't just normally go around like that and wearing a lei. It wasn't my normal look, but we were supposed to put on a skit for Bible school. And so I'm smiling, and I remember standing there while my mom was taking that photo, and I just have to really get back into her head because now it feels like that was a different person, like a different lifetime ago. But I had struggled to get up the steps because I had cellulitis in my right leg. I still, what's funny is I'm wearing jeans with a hole in it, and I could actually still see the scar from where that was. Um, I had cellulitis in my right leg from where I had just had a boil again, lanced, and I kept getting these deep-seated boils that would then turn into these dark purple scars, and I didn't know what was causing it, and I kept thinking it was something I was doing wrong, like, is it the soap I'm using? I'd switched to antibacterial and stronger soaps, and I just kept getting these boils. And at that point, I was 262 pounds. I had been married, let's see, that was 2000, 2 years. And I didn't like being unclothed in front of my husband. I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't feel healthy. I wasn't doing well. And I was in my 20s. And it was scary, Caitlin. So that day, I had gone to have a boil lanced. And my doctor had told me, you're inflamed, and we're just going to keep having to cut these boils open and drain them and pack them until you get the inflammation down, and probably till you lose 100 pounds. And then I cried because who hasn't tried to lose weight? Of course I had tried. I grew up in a home where my mom was like, va boom. She was so thin but beautiful. My brother was skinny. My dad and I struggled with our weight. We always had. People would compare me to him and say, "Oh, she looks like her daddy." And I really didn't. Facial-wise, I looked like my mom. But that's not what people saw. They just saw she's heavy like her dad. That's how I take that back. That's how I interpreted it as a kid, was because I'm big like my dad. Um, and that day my doctor said the inflammation is coming from excessive carbohydrates. So I want you to do something for 1 year. I want you to eat nothing but meat. He said, if you want some eggs, you can. Quote, leafy greens wouldn't kill you. Okay. So he wasn't 100% on board with Anthony Chafee on that one, I guess. Dr. Chafee would say, yes, they are. But Dr. Dunlap at that point said, if you want some cucumbers or pickles, leafy greens, salad, that's fine. But don't touch fruit, pasta, starches, anything sweet. And he said, I don't care if it's your birthday, give me 1 year. And I asked him, but how many calories can I eat? Because I was such a dieter. I had tried so many times dieting, and it always involved calories. He said, I don't care. But he did give me a piece of paper. He said, if it's on this side of the paper, eat as much as you want. If it's on this side of the paper, don't touch it. And I was like, that's everything I eat. Which was mostly cereal. I loved cereal. That was my go-to meal. fat-free skim milk with fat-free cereal that tasted like, Lucky Charms and Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Done. And I grew up in a family that also bought fat-free Cool Whip, that whipped 10 million ingredient product. And we put whipped cream, not sugar-free, fat-free whipped Cool Whip on our cereal, Caitlin. It was amazing, actually. But now looking back, what in the world were they thinking? So I took his advice. I called my dad and I said, Dad, I'm going to do this really low carb thing. Dr. Dunlap says that I should. I said, oh, but I can't. I was driving. Are potatoes low carb? He's like, no. I said, dang, I really like potatoes. And I haven't had a potato since that day. Not one, not a bite. I haven't had fruit since that day. Pasta, none of that. I really took it to heart. In the first year, I never had another boil. That was the last boil I ever had to have, Lance. I used to have chronic acne. I was on Accutane, and I still get like surfacey little zits once in a while. Not on anything though, other than like a little zit cream at night from the store I sometimes put on. The acne cleared up. I lost 80 pounds in the first year. Now the next 50 or so pounds took forever. But the first 80 was really fast. And I just felt so much better. And I was eating, and it felt great to actually eat food that wasn't just fat-free cereal. And that's how I got started on this journey. It's Dr. Dunlap. But I really, when I tell this now, if I don't really sit back and think about where I came from, how I felt, who I was, it's really easy for me to just say, to tell it like it's a fairy tale. But I can, if I really try, I can still remember so many emotions from that moment. And I'm so grateful that I had to get up on the stage that day, that I had to really feel how bad I felt in that moment, and that my mom took the picture, and I felt embarrassed to even be photographed in that moment, because it just solidified that point for me. And that was my low point. To have a low point on camera was kind of a bummer in the moment, but it's a gift now.
Yeah, you might not have that picture otherwise.
Yeah, I could easily have forgotten even that, so many parts of that day. I wouldn't have forgotten the conversation with the doctor, but so many other parts of that day, if it weren't for the fact that I had to go to Bible school and be in front of all of these people feeling like, oh, I just felt like a failure at that point. Yeah.
But your doctor was way ahead of his time. I mean, most doctors don't tell you that even now.
No, 19 years ago, he knew more than most doctors. He was quite elderly then. He's in his 90s now, but he's still alive. He's just very much retired. Um, he has mentioned through the years, I don't think it was that first day, but maybe that on the follow-up visit a year later, he mentioned the Inuit people to me and said, you should read up about the Inuits. And I was like, I mean, that at that point went in one ear and out the other. But it later, of course, came up when I was learning about Stefansson, and I thought, oh my gosh, Dr. Dunlap knew about the Inuit people. That's crazy.
So you were doing low carb, and then how did you stumble upon the key the carnivore groups and stuff?
Yeah. Well, after that meeting with him, that first appointment, I thought I would see him again because I saw him regularly for boils. I did not believe that was going to be my last one, even if he was right. Like, really? But I didn't see him for a full year. And during that time, I did read some Atkins stuff, and he always talked about climbing the carb ladder. And I thought, okay, so you start off with basically no carbs. You start off doing what Dr. Dunlap told me to do, but he said to do it for a year. And Atkins bets said, I think, do it for 2 weeks. Well, that's a big disparity. So I didn't just do it for 2 weeks. I stuck with it much longer. And then I wondered if I could add in more carbs. I didn't do it through potatoes and things, but just the plants, the vegetables that Dunlap had said, quote, wouldn't kill me anyway. But I didn't really like those. And I was keeping track of my weight. It did slow down my weight. And I was like, I'm slowing down weight for stupid green beans. That's
Yeah.
ridiculous. So as long as I stuck to meat, that gave me better results, and it certainly tasted better than the vegetables. I was never much of a vegetable lover, or I ate fruit, but I didn't love it. I didn't miss it, put it that way. And I never tried adding fruit back, not even during the first several months. Um, Throughout that 5 years, though, I did lose a lot of weight and I was feeling much better and I never had boils. So low carb, basically carnivore, but with sugar-free stuff was miraculous. And if people are willing to even do that, oh my gosh, I think they'd be doing a huge service for themselves. The issue for me was it wasn't getting easier. I was still very triggered by sugar and carbohydrates. My husband and I, we were already married at that point. He was still eating carbs every day. He still does. But for that 5 year period, it never got easy. I had cravings. I still wanted sweets. This is completely unhinged. And he still talks about what a nut job I was during this time. But I would take empty bowls. You know how your parents save all these like empty tubs for like leftovers? Okay. I live in the South, that's what we do. So I had tons of these empty plastic bowls and I would fill them with water and sugar-free jello. My fridge was literally stacked full of sugar-free jello. And I was just eating it all day long because I had this insatiable desire for sweet all the time. 5 years of that, it never went away. I was chugging Diet Dr. Pepper all the time. So the carbs were gone and my health improved, but mental wise, it was exhausting and I didn't think I could keep going. Also, nobody had told me how important it was to prioritize fat during that time. I
Mm,
wasn't working with a group or a coach, I was just doing this. And the doctor had never said, hey, without carbs, it's going to be really important for you to have an energy source. So I'm going to need you to eat fatty meats. And I grew up in the don't touch fat era. So I wasn't giving myself enough fat and I had started to get dry skin and I was hungry even though it felt like I was eating a lot. Things weren't perfect.
yeah.
And so I did go online and I googled, is it safe to only eat meat?
Mm,
That's basically what I was doing. And I was like, how long can you do that? I've been doing it 5 years. And that's when I found Charles Washington's group, Zeroing In on Health. Dana Spencer Shute was in that group, Dr. Lisa Wiedemann, Amber O'Hearn. I hit jackpot, is what I'm saying. Jackpot. And I shared my before and after pictures, and they were like, oh my gosh, and you did this eating meat? You're a carnivore? Well, they didn't say carnivore, they said you're zero carb. I said, yeah, I've gotten it down to zero carbs for a long time now. Five years with hardly any carbs. And they said, amazing. Do you feel good? I said, I do. I could use a little more energy. And it's still really hard. And they said, which part is hard? I was like, not eating sugar. And that's when it was like, the record scratch, What do you mean it's hard to not have sugar? You said you've been doing this for 5 years. And I said, right. I still drink diet sodas and sugar-free jello and sugar-free candies like breath mints. They're like,
mm,
well, there's your problem, sister. And they said, it's their diet soda.
yeah.
And I said, how is that even causing a problem? And they said, because it keeps this part of the brain which registers as sweet alive every single day. You're reawakening that. And until you cut it out 100%, you are going to just be tortured. And I thought, that's so stupid. How dare they try to take away my one joy in life,
Yeah.
not the jello. Okay. So I've definitely let them know this would be very hard, but that was it. The very last day that I had sweeteners. And it was a very bad 3 days for me because any, I didn't have a lot of hope that they were right, but I thought I'll give it a go. And on the fourth day, something was definitely better. And every day since, then it dramatically, it's like chains lifted. And I realized I'm okay. And I was very much in touch with that group every single day, all day, every day, and have been ever since for 14 years. We still talk. I'm still a member of their group and go on there pretty much daily. And that was a big turning point for me. So that's what took me from almost carnivore from 2004 to 2009 to 2009 being like, oh, this is so easy. It's been completely easy ever since, except when I was pregnant. That was not easy. But otherwise, that was a big game changer.
Um, did they talk to you about the fat also?
Oh, yes. Yes, they did. They made sure I understood if you're not having carbs, you only have two options left, protein and fat. Protein is very important, non-negotiable. You have to have it, but it's not your energy source. If you want to really feel energized, eat fatty meats. They said if it tastes really good to you. We didn't have Carb Manager back then. Nobody was tracking anything. They just said make sure it has plenty of fat. And they gave examples like a ribeye where you eat the fat on the ribeye. They were not fooling around with chicken back then. They were beef only. That's how that entire group was beef only. And so I fell in line with them. I ate fatty beef and I felt immediately better. Of course.
I
Yeah.
bet. I wanted to hear more about the pregnancy because, there's a lot of people that um, say that you need more carbs in pregnancy, or they're just, I mean, I understand there's a lot of fear around, because you're making a new life and you don't want to screw it up. So, what was your take on that?
So I had been carnivore about 10 months when I found out I was pregnant. So excited. Oh my gosh. You don't want to ruin this. And yet you're eating so differently, completely opposed to what everyone says you're supposed to do when you're pregnant. Eat the rainbow. There's no rainbow. It's just different shades of brown and red, right? And I wasn't even doing dairy before I got pregnant. And then meat aversion set in, so I couldn't even eat what I thought was best as a carnivore, which was really medium rare to rare beef, is what I consider to be best. Good fatty beef. Well, I couldn't even do that. I couldn't stomach it. So, like, okay, I can eat bacon and sausage, eggs and cheese. So that's not even what my doctor's recommending. It's subpar carnivore. That's what I'm giving my baby, is subpar carnivore. And it felt scary. And I was voicing these fears frequently to the zeroing in on health people. And Charles Washington said, "You're a human, yes?" I said, "Yes." "How much better do you feel eating this way?" "So much better." He said, "So it turns out all of that fiber was unnecessary for you." "Correct." He's like, "What is growing in your belly right now? Human or not human?" "It's a human, Charles. I really hope it's a human." He's like, "Can we at least start with the assumption that little humans are going to fare better on diet that big humans fare better on?"
It does
Yes.
make sense. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And so I didn't in my first trimester every time. I wasn't this super squeaky clean red meat only carnivore because my body was just sort of screaming against it. But I ate a lot of eggs. Eggs tasted great to me. Bacon and sausage, burger patties, as long as it had cheese and hot sauce. Everything had to have hot sauce, basically. And I made it through, but you're right. It is a scary thing because it's not like I had a lot of other people in my life to say, "Oh, that's exactly how I ate when I was pregnant." I had nobody saying that to me. No
That,
one.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's really brave. I mean, um,
Now, I did later find out Charlene Anderson had already had two carnivore pregnancies. Um, and her husband Joe was on the site, on the website, Zeroing In on Health. They were there at that time. We knew each other. They didn't talk a lot. They're pretty private. So
yeah.
it's not like I was, oh, first of all, I was nowhere near the first carnivore pregnancy. Speaking, you and I were talking about the Inuit people, and civilizations and entire groups of people that ate similar to this. But
Yes.
it feels different to read it in a book versus to have someone you personally know to say, "Oh, I was afraid too, but look at this beautiful baby."
And when you go to the doctor and they're like, you eating your 5 grains or whatever a day or
Yeah, I know. I was I was honest with my doctor. She was very cool. She was okay. There was a little push to have the test where you drink the very sugary sweet stuff to prove that you don't have gestational diabetes. I told her, I said, I'm certain I'll vomit. I haven't had sugar in so long at this point because even though I was only 10 months carnivore, I'd had 5 years prior to that without sugar. I said, I'll probably fail it. So what
yeah.
happens if I said, what happens if I do? She said, we would have to put you on a very strict diabetic diet. I said, can we just skip to that part then? Because that's what I'm doing. And she said, she really pondered that. She's like, okay, that is valid. And she let me do, there weren't CGMs that I knew of, at least. She never mentioned it. This was 2010, 2011 when she was born. Finger prick test. So every time I ate for a couple of weeks, she had me bring in my blood sugar numbers, and obviously it was fine. So I never took that test, but she didn't question me otherwise.
That's great. I mean, I did the same thing, the test with my finger, and I just wrote it down like every 4 hours.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's a really great option. Of course, now hopefully they would say just wear the CGM.
Yeah.
Much easier. A finger
Yeah.
store.
Well, that's amazing. And then I'm assuming your kids are all healthy and normal.
I mean, are kids ever really normal, Caitlin? They're normal. They're normal-ish. No, they're really, really good kids. They are. They're little athletes and smarty pants, and I'm proud of them. Yeah, they're good
Yeah.
kids.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, I think it takes so much, to buck the system and not just fall into whatever your doctor says. It's really hard to go against like or just the mainstream ideas. So that's amazing that you did that. Um, well, let's go on a little bit to now I know a couple years ago you started doing like 80/20 fat to protein. Is that something you still do? And what are you doing now?
Okay, so for those who don't know, 80/20 would be where 80% of your calories for the day come from fat, 20% from protein. I stuck to that very purposefully, strictly every single day for 5 months to see how that went, to see how I felt, if my body changed at this point. This was in the last couple of years, as you said. So I knew how I looked and felt as a carnivore, standard carnivore, got this. I just wanted to see what changed for me. Um, I gave a YouTube update on it. I had my lab work done and everything was good. I was doing very well, but I was kind of over it because you have to work to make carnivore 80% every single day. It's not standard meats. Ribeye, not 80/20. Bacon, eggs, burger patties, very few. Pork belly, yes, 80/20. Um, Short ribs, 80/20. There's the list. Cod livers,
Uh,
80/20. I was getting a little weary of it. Now, of course, any meat can be made into an 80/20 appropriate food if you just add fat to it. And that's what I was mostly doing. I didn't only eat 3 foods for 5 months, but there's a lot of butter, a lot of tallow. I was making a lot of these little whipped tallow bites made just from beef. I was ordering tons of these Chicago Shipping Company beef tallow canisters, putting them in the freezer. It wasn't my favorite way to eat. I like bacon burgers, ribeye. I love it. So at the end of 5 months, I gave all of my lab work, all of the updates, and I just went back to more of a standard carnivore, what I feel like eating. Some days that is high fat because pork belly is amazing. And ribs. I love ribs. But also I wake up and eat 6 eggs every morning, and I don't make sure that I add an appropriate amount of tablespoons of butter to hit 80/20. I just eat 6 eggs and cook them in 1 tablespoon of butter. I'll eat 2 or 3 burger patties for lunch and dinner. It could be pork belly, but it might be chicken thighs. Living on the edge these days, Caitlin. Just whatever macros show up, it's good. I do have a general rule for myself and for people that I work with. If you're a total carnivore, I want to see fat between 60 and 80, unless you've got a really good reason for it to be otherwise. For example, you're taking a day to do a certain type of fast. Like if you are doing a PSMF day, or you're doing a water fast, obviously, you're not going to hit 60 to 80% of fat, calories from fat. But for most days, I do think most people should keep their fat between 60 and 80%. Also, if you have a reason that you need to stay in therapeutic ketosis for epilepsy or for depression, go higher than 80 if you need. But I feel like if most people keep it higher than that for an ongoing time, then they may be lower on protein than they should be. So 60 to 80, as long as I'm there pretty much every day, I feel very comfortable with that.
It's, 60, I think 60 to 70 is pretty easy to hit. Just eating, however, just,
Meat.
yeah,
Yeah, that's just where meat falls, 60 to 80. You
yeah.
have to purposefully say, I am going to exclude the rest of the chicken to only eat the skinless, boneless chicken breast.
Ugh.
Get lower than, I know, without fat added to hit lower than 60. Or I'm going to purposefully eat shrimp without dipping it in butter. Like you
Yeah,
have to almost make carnivore taste bad to go lower
yeah,
than 60.
I agree. No, so was there any significant changes that you saw doing that for 5 months?
I was already at my goal weight. I did lose some weight. And at that time, I was also weight training. So I did put on muscle. But if you are eating enough meat and you're weight training, you're going to put on muscle, probably regardless of high fat or not. I'm not saying I wouldn't have put on. That had to do with I was going to CrossFit.
Exercising, yeah.
Yeah, that had to do with the exercise. But it didn't hold me back from that. I have an in-body scale at home. I was able to add muscle mass on a high fat carnivore diet, which some people would say, oh, you can't. I mean, you can. I can, at least. I'm eating meat. It was just fatty meat. I
Yeah.
had I had good energy. My lab work was probably the best I have ever had as a carnivore, as in my triglycerides were so low and my HDL got up in the 80s, which mine on standard carnivore stays in the 60s.
Uh,
Perfectly good. For those that don't know, it's perfectly fine. But 80s, I was like, okay. But again, I also was exercising more. So that'll play a part on HDL as well.
um, well, that's great. I mean, I think it's important to try different things and see, and there's different phases and also your stress level, and there's so many things that play into. So when people do carnivore, like, should they worry about, especially when they're starting out, like, should they worry about macros? And I think when they come from keto, they're so focused on macros and stuff, and it's hard to like kind of let that go. Do you think they should just kind of forget about it for a while, or is it important to do that?
All right, I think in the very beginning, there are bigger issues. There are issues such as breaking sugar or carb addiction for a lot of people. There are issues like how to deal with your family, how to go out to eat, how to live with a carb eater next to you. Like you got bigger fish to fry, maybe literally, than dealing with where are your macros. But when somebody comes to me and says, even if they're in week 3 or something, they're fairly new and they say, I'm not feeling good. I'll typically say, well, you're going through a big adjustment. There is an adaptation period, but it's also very possible that you're eating very lower than 60% on fat. It's also very possible that you're under eating, which will make you feel like trash on any diet. So there are reasons to look at it, even in the early stages. But I usually recommend that people deal with those bigger things first: the addiction, the social aspect, getting just used to this dealing with the bathroom changes because sometimes gut issues take a while versus I'm going to need you to hit any particular macro. But I do think if someone is able and willing to track, the general recommendation of just take a peek at that pie chart, make sure you're staying 60 to 80-ish is a good ballpark. But as we said, most all meat falls there anyway. So maybe the general advice should just be don't do anything weird, man. Just eat meat that tastes good. Don't make it weird.
Yeah, don't. I think there's a kind of an overthinking epidemic in our, especially with women. It's like kind of analysis paralysis.
Yeah. But I don't tend to get, well, let's say maybe 10% of every group member that I work with is probably a newish carnivore. The vast majority have been doing this for a while and they've hit some walls. They're troubleshooting. That's why I will frequently say, hey, let's track that because I can't help you problem solve if we don't even know what you're doing.
Yeah.
No, if you have no idea how many calories you're even eating a day, you have no idea. Let me teach you how to figure that out so we can help solve the issue. But if there's not an issue or you haven't even started, then no, that's not what I'll lead off with.
I feel like when I talk to people, one of the big things they're doing wrong is dairy. Would you agree with that? And what do you tell your groups about dairy?
Yeah, well, I think if there's anything unanimous about all humans, it's that we love cheese. So whether you're talking to a vegetarian or carnivore or standard American diet, we all love cheese. It's just so good. So when people hear, oh, you eat an all meat diet? I do, or all animal products. They say, what does that involve? I say, as much meat, eggs, and dairy as you want. Can you have cheese? I'm like, yes, you can. Eyes wide and like, I could do that. And they're just picturing charcuterie tray, like boards. I could eat charcuterie boards. And I'm like, I do not think that should be the bulk of our diet. I do think the bulk of our diet should not be cured processed meats. It should be fresh meats. And there are plenty of people, especially in the beginning, if what you were doing was, sandwiches, pasta, donuts, and pizza, keep your cheese on a side of have steak with a side of cheese. That's amazing. What an improvement. At some point, though, when someone is hitting a wall and we're now to this troubleshooting stage, and I find out that they're eating a lot of cheese and their coffee has what do they say? A splash of heavy cream. A splash. I know what a splash can mean. It could mean a tablespoon. It could mean a cup. Okay, depends on the day. Yes, it can hinder people. There are a lot of people with dairy sensitivities, and if you are having a sensitivity to a food, it's going to cause an issue, no matter what the food is. And dairy is a pretty predominant one. So I say if it's working, keep it. Have your cheese, and if it's not working, try life without it.
I think it can be, um, yeah, try it. Definitely do an elimination of like 30 days or so and see if that will especially break a stall, right?
A lady yesterday, she was so stalled out until I think it was the first of this year, she decided to try no dairy, and now she's down 17 pounds.
Wow.
She was already carnivore, but she also said her whole body feels better. So sometimes the weight loss doesn't come immediately, but if something starts feeling better, you're like, maybe I was sensitive. My joints aren't as, achy. I wake up a little bit more refreshed. I miss that dairy, but something's working. What a great sign. I say stick with that a little while. Weight loss might follow.
Yeah, sometimes I have pretty big dairy sensitivity and I get really jealous of the people who can eat cheese and stuff because I feel like that kind of keeps them motivated, whereas when all you have is beef, it's like, or all you can have is protein, no cheese and no milk. I mean, not, or cream in your coffee, that kind of thing. It's kind of sad, and then
It's kind of sad. Yes.
and then you're also like not supposed to have like, coconut milk or things like that. And it's like, okay. It's kind of sucks, but um it but you know, you have to keep your why in mind, right? And
Right. To me, if somebody says I'm so frustrated, I had one lady who was so frustrated because I've given up everything else and now I can't even have dairy. I said, well, I just want you to weigh it out. And I think this is always true. Which is more frustrating? The issues can't resolve right now, whether it's weight, the joint pain, whatever it is. This is your frustration with that. And this is the frustration over cutting out dairy. Like, where are you right now? If it's more frustrating to cut out the dairy, for Pete's sakes, keep your joint pain, baby. It's okay with me. Like, whatever it is. But at some point, people will typically say, all right, I put it off for a long time. Now, this frustration is heavier. So I'll cut it out and see. You never know till you try.
yeah, and sometimes, yeah, I mean, when I stop eating dairy, like I will drop weight a lot easier than when I do eat dairy. So,
Yeah. And also, I tell folks if you ever get to a weight where you're perfectly comfortable and happy with where you are, and dairy is the only reason you're avoiding dairy was weight, maybe that could be part of your maintenance life. It's
yeah.
carnivore and dairy. I put 1 tablespoon of cream in every cup of coffee still, and I'm fine with that at this point. My first in 2009, when I did find zeroing in on health, they did not do dairy. It was beef only. So my first very long stint, and 10 months until I was pregnant and everything then needed cheese. For 10 months, I didn't touch dairy at all. And, it was kind of sad, but I had a group of people around me. They weren't sad about it. That's just how they did it. And like, these are my people now, is how I felt. These are my people. We don't eat dairy. We don't eat sugar. It was just one of many things that we didn't eat. We loved our beef. So it didn't feel sad back then,
Yeah.
but it would to me now.
Well, I think also you have to figure out a way can it be like you're doing just 1 tablespoon? Can you moderate it? You know,
Right.
like Lisa talks about, do you act sober? Do you have
Yeah.
sober behavior around cheese or, heavy cream? It's like then that kind of answers your question of if you can handle it or not.
When it comes to the liquid heavy cream in my cup of coffee, this has 1 tablespoon of cream in it. So sober around that. Then for Christmas, I got my kids this canister, and you pour cream into it, just heavy cream. You screw on the lid, and you attach this little tiny N2O, I think is what it's called, nitric oxide
Oh.
thing, and it turns it into oh my gosh, I'm not sober. I'm a total addict again. Like, I think about it. It's in my fridge, sitting there full of cream. If I wake up in the night, I want to go hit that thing up. So it's the same product. It's heavy cream. But
Yeah.
somehow, if it's the tablespoon in my coffee, I'm good. If it's whipped cream in a can, it's a
It reminds you of that fat-free Cool Whip, right?
it brings it all back for me, Caitlin. That's
Oh, I know. I grew up on that Cool Whip too.
yeah.
Uh, so in the South, it's a must-have.
You gotta have Cool Whip. If for nothing else, but for the Tupperware container afterwards.
Yeah, you keep those forever.
Yes.
Um, all right, well, what are some of the mistakes you see in your groups that maybe we haven't talked about yet?
Oh, we talked about low fat. I'd say the most common one is just people don't feel hungry like they used to feel hungry. And so they'll say, I'm not hungry. I'm eating all I want to eat. I had a grown man the other day. He would say, Kelly, I eat all I want. I eat to satiety. And I just don't know if it's enough food. My first thought is like, well, if you're eating all you want, that's great. Good job. How do you feel? He's pretty good. I said, how are your results so far? Were you hoping to lose weight? I hate to assume. And he said, well, I was, and not really losing very much. I said, okay, well, and we were on a Zoom call with groups, and as I frequently do, I do a screen share, pull up Carb Manager. I said, could you just ballpark tell me what you eat? Give me a typical day of eating, and let's find out, what does it look like? So, what do you eat for breakfast? Nothing. I just drink black coffee. I said, oh, okay. And how about lunch? He said 4 quarter pound beef patties. Oh, perfect. Love that. And dinner. He said, "Well, that's it. I'm never hungry for dinner." I said, "Well, that's 880 calories, and that's what you eat every day? Do you snack?" He's like, "No, I'm full." There's the problem. We can't live on 880 calories a day. He has no energy. He's not losing weight. He's starving, but he doesn't feel starving because we are used to what hunger feels like as a carb addict, where our blood sugar drops and we're hangry and you have to eat every few hours. So very often when we calculate what people are actually eating, they are so far below what would be recommended. I'd say that is the top mistake. Yeah.
Never had that problem. I don't
Oh
get
no, not me either. Never. Tell me.
it.
I am convinced. I've never been in a food eating contest. I think I would rock it, actually. You know how sometimes you'll have a food eating contest and it's all these huge men, and then there'll be like one kind of small chick who shows up and beats them all. I think it could be me.
Yeah,
I,
like the Nathan's hot dog thing. There's like this tiny little Asian guy and he eats all the food.
yes, I love to eat, and I really can put away a lot of food. Always have. It was very problematic when it was carbs, but it's working out for me now.
Yeah, but when you go eat with carnivores, then you see like I mean, I can hang for a while, but I'm not like an OMAD person who can
Oh,
eat
that's
like
true.
the whole thing at one time. I would prefer 2 meals, but
Yeah.
um,
And I eat 3 times a day. So really, if it comes down to one single meal, I would also struggle, truth be told. I do eat a lot in a day, but like I've sat down and had meals with Bella, steak and butter gal. I cannot hang. Not in one sitting.
yeah,
That girl is phenomenal. She would whoop everybody in the eating competition, but she doesn't eat, I don't believe, 3 times every day like I do. So over the course of a day, I do put away a lot of food.
yeah, yeah, same here. So, um, but it's fun to see. It's fun to eat with other carnivores, and then you're like, oh, I'm not so weird, you know.
Yeah. Yes.
And so let's just give people like a pep talk, a little pep talk on if they're new or if they've been doing it a while and maybe they just need to get back on track as before we go.
Okay. Listen, y'all, I know when you're first starting out, it feels like this insurmountable thing. Like every single hour of every day is going to be a struggle forever. And in the beginning, every hour might be a struggle because I remember I was shaky and I was about in the sweats just thinking about at that point it was animal crackers that were in the classroom next door that I was so used to eating. But if people realize it may be tough for a few days, eat to satiety, nourish your body with something good, take some walks outside, get outside, find people who support you, even if it's not your day-to-day life. Get online. We are here. We are ready to back you up, and I'm so in people's corner. But open your mind to hope. Stop this inner voice that keeps saying, you can't do this. You always quit. You've tried before. Stop. It has worked for many of us out here. It would work for you too. Nobody is meant to thrive on these toxic process, this junk that was intended to be hard to quit. That's what it was made to be. It was never meant to nourish us. And if people have that hope and this sense of desperation, and they've got even a small start of a plan, something as basic as what Dr. Dunlap told me that day, run with that. And then as you start to feel and experience benefits, even if it's not on the scale immediately, I encourage folks, write them down, reflect, like, I don't think my feet are as stinky as they were before. True story. I used to have the most stinky feet. And now I don't. Or if somebody says my toenails are growing faster, okay, we're going to take it as a sign of health. So reflect on your desperation, cherish that, and realize that's going to drive me forward, but have hope. Get a plan and some support, and then take note when things feel better because it's going to just motivate you to keep going. And it may not be quick, but my gosh, it's delicious. It doesn't have to be. We've got the rest of our lives here, people. Just relax, feel nourished, and know that you are doing amazing things for your body.
That's so great. I think that, you're just helping so many people, and I know this video is gonna reach the right people who need to hear it. So make sure and follow Kelly at My Zero Carb Life. She has a great YouTube channel and she has a new video with Dr. Barry. Go check that one out. So thank you so much, Kelly. And please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment if you can relate to what we were talking about today. Really appreciate it. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.